This is so the Intel XDK is a tool for creating PhoneGap apps, and there's been some great tools being shown up here. I'm really impressed with all the stuff that's there. So this is just another variation on that theme. The main point is that it is a Cordova, I try to call it a tool that coexists with CLI, so it doesn't actually use CLI underneath. We actually do the builds up in the cloud, but we basically try to honor and coexist with other tools that you have. So as you go through, it's a fairly got a wide array of tools available, or features within it, most of which are optional. Even though they're all there, you're not required to use everything that's in there. So it's the kind of a thing where you can take and use what you need and then just ignore the rest, if you like. It's a heavily evolving tool. So this version that you'll see here was introduced about a year ago. Almost exactly a year ago, and it's been released multiple times. There's a release about every 6 to 8 weeks generally. Some of those are just bug fixes. Some of them are new features. There was a bug fix released just a couple of weeks ago. There'll be another probably bug fix release in November, and then sometime following that there'll be some feature releases. So if you're using it, we'd like to hear your feedback on what you need to do, what it can't do for you, and so forth. But the main point is that it is compatible, does coexist with Cordova. It doesn't require that you install CLI and so forth. If you wish to have CLI installed on your system, you can work with it. There's a few tricks to make that work, but they're not difficult tricks. So given I only have 15 minutes here, I'm going to go right through this pretty quickly. We're not going to be able to go in great depth. Sorry, hitting the wrong key. But fundamentally, there's edit and layout tool in here, which again is optional. There's a variety of debug tools that we're trying to bring together to be a little bit more cohesive and easier to figure out how to use. And they're based on stuff that most of you guys are probably familiar with. And then, of course, the build service that's part of it. So this is the part where I'm sorry that I'm the worst at demoing this particular part, because I'm just not much of a layout person. But there is, let me see, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but there is a nice little layout tool here that can be used. Basically, it's using media queries, and it's got its own grid system to help you lay out how you'd like your tool design. Now, if I go look at this in the Ripple emulator, it gives me a better sense of what this thing is going to look like. But there's, there's some property editing and so forth of it. We've actually got a services, oops, sorry, pushed the wrong. A services module on here that will tie up, if I find the right one. Okay, here it is. That you can use to do some simple calls, bind some data, puts together a nice little JavaScript library for you that you can then link to the widgets within your layout, or you can drag those into just your own straight code. So you got two ways of bringing those in. So that's a very nice, useful thing. This particular app doesn't do much more than that. It's not a very smart app. If you're using the editor, you're actually working in brackets. There's a curated set of the extensions that are available within brackets. In particular, the Git one is very nice, and then there's several lint in there as well, some other code beautifiers and so forth. You don't have access to every single beautifier or every single extension, only because it needs to work in this encapsulated environment, and there's some that don't work well in that scenario. But if there are some extensions you'd like to see in there, let us know. Again, if you have an editor you like using, you can go ahead and use it. The project files are just stored on your system where you want them. The only requirement is there's a project directory and a www directory underneath that, or you can name it something else, and your sources that you're working on are in that www directory. So if you like using Sublime or whatever it is like using for editing, you can go ahead and use that. So this is optional. There's a few features that do require the brackets editor. One, which I cannot demonstrate all here because of I can't get a proper Wi-Fi connection. So some of this requires a Wi-Fi. But I can do, well, there's an interesting thing here with, so I'm just gonna, I've got an Nexus tablet attached here. And it's probably gonna take a while now to see the fact that I had locked. Sorry about that. There we go. So it's running this app on the tablet, and it's basically, I've just got a little line here, let me just, I just made a change into the save, and so there's an app on here called App Preview, which is similar to some of these other preview apps, which allows me to dump the sources in there, make quick changes to my app, and make updates. So all I did there was added as you saw, a couple lines. It was pushing automatically on save. And then there's a live layout feature which you may be familiar with in brackets, and that's also been hooked up. That's the one that I can't demonstrate because I need a local Wi-Fi that connects the two together, and that's not working here. So we've essentially extended that brackets live layout tool into the app preview so that you can do it directly on your device. And that would apply to any device for which we have this app preview, which is Windows Phone 8, Windows 8, iOS, and Android. So then I mentioned, we saw a quick view here of this is actually just Ripple emulator encapsulated. So if anybody's been using Ripple emulator, that's what this is. It's got a few bug fixes and things like that, and it's also been augmented with some additional plugins that we provide, but it's got the full set of core plugins in there. So if I'm using the emulator, I can do some simple debugging of my app, using the tools that Ripple emulator provides. Obviously, I can't debug anything that's got third-party plugins in here. So that's a limitation, but that's a limitation of Ripple. We're working on ways to help make that more accessible, actually debugging with third-party plugins, but that's something that's a down-the-road kind of feature we hope to get to. Likewise, I can insert a winery script in here, and this will just quickly push my app up to the cloud, and I run the app preview with my script in, and I'll get a console here, which isn't going to show up right now because I'm not doing it. But that's a nice way to get debugging on a variety of devices. Of course, it has the limits that Winery has if you've used it. But it's a way to get there quickly. Probably the nicest feature is where So this is going to load into what's essentially a Crosswalk session. So there's the same app again, but now you can see it on the screen up here as well. And so this is full remote Chrome Dev Tools on the device for debugging. You see I got the console down here. If we take a look, there were some questions about which version of the web view is in there, and you look down below, you see in this particular version, it's Chrome 37 is actually what's in the Crosswalk 8 build system. So what we've done with Crosswalk is we've added Cordova into it as a way for you to deliver. So from your perspective, it's just a Cordova app with replaceable web view. Now it's not the replaceable web view it's not using the technique that Joe was describing that will show up in a future edition of CLI. It's doing a complete Crosswalk build on our cloud service and then providing that in your app. But it has the same effect. And that's available on Android 4 and above, 4.0 and above. You can't load that on an Android 2 device. The nice thing about that, of course, is that you've got a replacement web view that's fully functional, all features that you want, great performance, includes WebGL and things like that. But most importantly, it's exactly the same features, bugs, capabilities across every device that you load it onto. One thing I think that was maybe a little unclear for some folks is when you do this, because you've got a browser built in, so what I'm talking about is if we're over here on the build page and we choose to do for a Crosswalk for Android build, when you do that build, you'll actually get 2 APKs back. Because there's an embedded browser inside that thing, you are getting an APK for ARM and an APK for x86. We adjust the version codes appropriately so that all you have to do is insert both of them into the Google Play Store, and it will do the right thing when a device hooks up. So in the Play Store, your end user only sees one app, but Google Play delivers the appropriate one to your device, depending on whether it's x86 or ARM. And likewise, you could create an Android for Cordova build for Android 2.3 if you wanted to. I've had some customers do that, so you'd have a third APK that you put up there, and it's just a matter of playing around with the version codes. So I think I have only about a few minutes left here. Yes. So this is a free tool. It can be downloaded at xdk.intel.com. There are no royalties associated with the apps that you build. It is using standard Cordova. Currently, our build system builds the Cordova 3.5. With the 3.5.1 patch that's appropriate for Android devices. There's also 3.3 build if you wish to use it, and we will probably get the next update up there by the end of the year. So we don't have every single release of Cordova up there, but we're trying to stay reasonably current with the versions that are out there. Again, as I said, you can actually coexist with CLI on your system. So if you wanted to use CLI, but somebody else, one of your colleagues, wanted to develop using this, it is possible to do that. If somebody wants to know how, I can explain to them later on during another break or later on. So again, it's meant to coexist and use the pieces that make sense to you. As we go along, we'll be adding in more features and trying to evolve this to be a really, fully featured tool set for creating Cordova hybrid apps. So just to end this, everybody asks me, why is Intel in this business and so forth? So anybody know the tune to the Brady Bunch? Nobody? Nobody's ever heard of the Brady Bunch and heard? Oh, I see, 1, 2. Okay, well, this song is sung to the tune, so for those who know, they might try to sing along, okay? So I'm going to try. Here's a story of a big chip maker who was searching for the hearts of mobile devs. Many of them knew JavaScript like their buddies, the youngest one, CSS. Here's a story of a software project that was started in Vancouver, Canada. It was given to Apache, renamed Cordova, for making hybrid apps. Then came one day when these chip guys met Cordova, and they knew that it was much more than a fad, that this HTML5 stuff might be a useful platform for creating some great hybrid mobile apps. The XDK, that's the way we became the XDK. Da-dun-dun-dun-dun. The end. Thank you.
That was rad.
I'm not sure which switch I'm supposed to go back up.
Oh.
What's that?
Yes, everything has been recorded, so that will be online.
And just for reference, for those who were here last year, I'm not drunk. I only had about 6 ounces of beer.
Easy as, yeah. Do we have any questions for Intel? I mean, seriously. A lot of people are always like, what, Intel's into this mobile thing? Nothing? on someone.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks,
here's
guys.
Here's a question.
Oh. Oh, yeah, good.
Is the question applying it to Edison? Is that what you said? Yeah, in fact, you may have seen there was one little note there that said also for IoT debugging. We have a variant of it, but really it's got that variant, which is available for download, is designed to make it easy to get to a Node.js console on an IoT device. And then, yeah, so there's not a whole lot in there, but there's a little bit. And then it contains all these other features as well, so you can create what we call a companion app to go with it.
Fun.
So.
Ooh.
Oh, I don't know the board names that well, so I think it works with both. But basically, if you have Node.js on the device, it could be anything, or for the console, you can actually talk to others, make companion apps to talk to non-Node.js enabled devices, but the XDK won't help you much in that regard then. Yes, yeah. Yeah, there's a linkage there, yeah.
If you guys are also using Ripple and/or are confused or interested by the idea of Cordova browser, Cordova browser is a platform. So are we. We don't know what it means necessarily, and so come grab us and talk to us about this because there's questions and there's not a lot of answers. But we want to make dev better. Basically, it's the thing.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff we want to do with Ripple and/or the browser to make it easier to do dev for third-party plugins and that kind of thing. So, but there's a lot of work to do there. So.
All right, thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.